Today we're going to look at a really great tool from design thinking that helps us as educators gather, organize, and analyze information about students. We're going to look at how to use empathy maps to build better understanding of and connection with our students in order to better meet their learning and social emotional needs. At HFLI, we define design thinking as a collection of methods and mindsets that enable us to explore problems creatively, then reframe and act on them. Empathy is one of those methods, and it grounds all the work that we do in design thinking. It enables us to build a deeper understanding of another person, in our case, colleagues or students, so that we can better connect with their feelings, their perspectives, and their lived experiences. So what exactly is an empathy map? Well, it's an organized, structured tool that allows us to visibly represent information in 4 quadrants. That information comes from a single point in time, so that it contrasts with something like a journey map where you capture an experience that lasts over time. An empathy map helps keep you focused on a particular human being, someone you care about, someone you want to learn more about in order to intervene or support. In your empathy map, you're going to focus on 4 quadrants of information. What does that person say or do? What is that person thinking or feeling? Empathy maps help us separate what's explicit, the saying and doing, what's observable, and what is implicit, the thinking and feeling. What do we need to conclude or infer from other information? So we use empathy maps for a variety of reasons. Kind of very directly, they are a very intentional way to organize information from diverse sources, people, documents, observations. It pushes our attention on what we can observe and what we can infer. Both are important, but we need to confirm information from both kinds of sources to make sure that we're on the right track and we're not making assumptions. Empathy maps push us, by analyzing the information and laying it out, to a deeper understanding of other people. It helps us work with our teams as well to consolidate that information from everyone so that we can look for patterns, themes, insights. We can compare and contrast what we're finding about our students or about our colleagues to make better decisions. By laying out the information in these quadrants, we can surface what's known and what may need further investigation. And lastly, by having all that information captured into one space, visually and constructedly, it can promote discussion, greater collaboration, and deeper thinking about what to do next. So how do we go about completing an empathy map? Well, the first and most important thing is who's the person you're going to pay attention to. Is it a person you care about? Is it a person who needs some additional support? Is it a person you want to learn more about? So step 1 is to identify and describe that person with as much detail as is reasonable to capture that persona. You're going to include information in those 4 quadrants: saying, doing, thinking, and feeling, capturing what you know and also what you think you know. You might, as a point of reference, identify what is known in a singular color and what is inferred or what you're not quite sure about in a different color, so you can go back and explore that later. But either way, you're going to capture information in all of those 4 quadrants. At all times, you want to make sure that you're really keeping in the forefront the person you're paying attention to, capturing as much information as is reasonable so that you can begin to think intentionally. Once you've completed your information onto the journey map, you're then going to take time to review that information, looking for patterns or themes, information that contrasts or conflicts, other information that might confirm or align your understandings. You might use it to discuss with other people or figure out what other questions do we have. But the basic pattern is to complete the map with information and then pause, reflect, assess before you make decisions about what to do next. So let's take a look at an example to explore how we as educators might use empathy maps in order to better understand students. I'm going to use my favorite first grader, Calvin, his teacher, and his buddy Hobbs. In the first part of the example, Calvin's in class working with his teacher. In the second, he's at home doing homework with Hobbs. Calvin's teacher: who would like to summarize what we just read? Calvin: how about you? Calvin responds: sorry, I'm here against my will. I refuse to cooperate. They can transport my body to school, but they can't chain my spirit. My spirit roams free. Walls can't confine it. Laws can't restrain it. Authority has no power over it. his teacher, Calvin, if you would put half of the energy of your protest into your schoolwork. You can try and leave a message, but my spirit screens its calls. Second example. Calvin, if you ask me, these assignments don't teach you how to write. They teach you how to hate to write. Deadlines, rules, how to do it, grades. How can you be creative when someone's breathing down your neck? Hobbes responds, I guess you should try not to think about the end result too much and just have fun with the process of creating. Every time I do that, I end up in the school psychologist's office. Well, maybe not that much fun. Okay, so let's start to build out an empathy map about Calvin. Step one, if you remember, is to put him at the center of our design process, of our analysis process. So we're going to place him in the middle of our empathy map, and we're going to add some details to flesh out his persona. His name is Calvin. He's a first grade boy. He has a tiger as a best friend. He's imaginative in the thinking he does in his conversations with Hobbes, in his dreams about being Spaceman Spiff, and he's active. He loves the outdoors. So I can draw some information now from what I know about Calvin, what I've heard him say, what I've seen him do, what I believe he thinks and feels, and I'm going to add that into the empathy map as well. So what have I heard Calvin say? Well, if I draw from my examples, I heard him quote, deadlines, rules, how to do it, grades, how can you be creative when someone's breathing down your neck? He also mentioned chaining my spirit and having no authority over me. Those are some things that Calvin said that we can capture in the empathy map to better understand his state of mind, his behaviors in school, how he fits into that context. Next, we're going to take a look at what does he do? What did we observe? Well, we've seen Calvin complaining and protesting. We also see him distracting other people in his class, and he's sort of slacking on his homework. He doesn't really want to do it. Once we've thought about what he's done and said, let's move over into the implicit side, since saying and doing were explicit. Those were observable. On the implicit side, we're going to think about what do we believe that he's thinking? What clues do we have in that regard? And from what I can derive, he really doesn't think school is fun. He really wants to express himself, and the work to him is not interesting. It's really shutting him down. It's constraining him. On the feeling side, Calvin also has some pretty strong emotions. He looks pretty bored. He's not engaged. He's frustrated by what he's being asked to do, and he feels restrained or constrained by the assignments. Once I've put all that information into the empathy map itself, I can begin to reflect and assess what I've learned. Some of that information came from me, but some of it might have come from my colleagues as well. Either way, it's all in the empathy map, and now I can say, well, what does it really mean? In this case, I'm coming at it as an educator. And what I hear, what I think about, is that Calvin doesn't find the curriculum engaging. It's really, frankly, not connecting to his creative side. Also, the learning tasks themselves are not intellectually challenging. He's like, meh, I don't want to do this. But it leads me to a question as well. What specifically is not challenging enough for Calvin? How am I going to go about answering that? Those are my next steps. How do I think about the curriculum? How do I think about the learning tasks? And how do I get more specific in order to support Calvin, both academically and social emotionally? Empathy maps can help us build connections to our students by deepening our understanding of them. But we can also expand that beyond our understanding of students to helping students understand one another. So for example, you might have your class build an empathy map about a new student who might be joining your class. How can they develop a welcome strategy by thinking about what might that person think or feel? What might that person say or do? And how can we help that person enter our learning community more comfortably in a more welcoming fashion? We also might use empathy maps and have students think about their own behaviors. Somebody who may have broken a class rule or violated a compact with their learning community. That person can write about, what did I say? What did I do? How was I feeling? What was I thinking? In order to explore their own emotions, prompting a stronger conversation with you, or even an internal reflection on what they might do differently. Having your student document in a non-threatening way, in a way that captures those 4 quadrants, can help them dive more deeply into how might I do this differently and what went wrong this time. Beyond social and emotional connections, we can use empathy maps to just support some academic learning outcomes. So here's a couple of examples of the ways that we've seen it used in the past. You might use empathy maps to actually map out a fictional character, say Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird, or Drew from New Kid. Again, looking at what does the text give us in terms of what that person said or did, what did that person think or feel. You might have your students actually build an empathy map for a literary carry they're creating, a short story or a poem, a play that they're drafting. How can they create a real, authentic, and rich character to flesh out that storyline? If we move beyond ELA, we can look at using empathy maps to capture important figures from history, famous scientists or mathematicians, athletes, artists. We can look at what experiences did that person have over time, and how did they address the challenges that they have faced. Maybe even explore the growth mindset, the persistence of that person through obstacles that they encountered along the way. Ultimately, we as educators can use empathy maps to slow down, to gather and organize information in the 4 quadrants, saying, doing, thinking, and feeling, in order to explore them more deeply, to synthesize the information and analyze it, to bring information together from multiple sources. We can focus on real students to deepen our understanding of and build connection with them, or we can pay attention to public figures or fictional characters. In the end, it puts us in a stronger position to connect, intervene, learn about, remember, or honor another person. Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about empathy maps or other educator tools that we have, please visit us at learn.hfli.org. I've enjoyed my time with you today. Come back again. I'm Debbie.